And biggest item, it's got to be capable of providing and improving service. If I'm going to ask any type of capital requirements, it's got to be able to, one, improve productivity and improve the service. So if it's a roof replacement, it's going to extend the life of the building. It's going to protect the assets underneath that roof, right? And it's going to keep everybody that works in that particular floor productive, okay, earning some sort of revenue or margin for the company. Okay, so this is where your facilities inventories come in, your facilities registers. Remember, we're going to go back and assess the condition of the equipment. So if you have that complete list of your roofs, of your carpeting, of your equipment, and you've already categorized them by condition, the central plant we toured, the very first one, we can come up with a register on that particular one. And I bet we can come up with a whole list of capital improvement requirements. Provide adequate capacity to operate the facility. Okay? And in some cases, if I don't replace a piece of equipment, what's going to be the risk and consequences if it fails? And of course, with that, you have a risk assessment. Part of the emergency planning, a risk assessment if you do lose a chiller or an air handler, especially in a data center. What's going to be the consequences to the company, to the organization? So part of that, you're going to build that up as part of your business case. Okay, we reviewed the components of a business case. This is just another component to that. Some other strategies would be to support the working environment. Again, biggest one right here is extending the building useful life. I want to extend the life of the building and its assets to the most opportune time that I can. That's the whole reason behind a maintenance plan. Okay? It's going to provide employee benefits and also going to support the mission of the facility. If it's a service, if it's a product, okay, if it's a resource that they're producing. And it's got to be capable of performing the intended mission, which is to improve, extend, modify, or replace a piece of equipment. And then also optimize the economic opportunity. Some sort of economic benefit has to be identified in your capital plan or your capital investment. Part of that economic opportunity is going to be is if I replace the air handlers now, it's going to extend the life of not only the air handlers themselves for another 30 years, but the life of the building, which means I don't have to sell this building and move to another building. The building's paid for, so I have no depreciation on that. So again, maintaining my infrastructure, in some cases capital replacement, capital investment, is going to extend that. Roofs. Okay. What's a roof last? 25 years? You can get 30 if you really have a real good maintenance plan. You could get 35, depending on the application of the type of roof. But typically, most roofs, 20 years here in Arizona. After 20 years, you're talking about a replacement plans. And roofs, are they inexpensive to replace? You could go down to, what, Home Depot and get a couple rolls of some roofing and throw it up there? Yeah, it's going to be significant when it comes down to that. And not only that, the insulation, you're talking to all the infrastructure that's up on the roof that you got to modify, contend with. Okay, John, you've toured a lot of roofs. You know, there's an entire whole world on top of your roof. So it's not an item where it's just a flat roof, you just go in and just remove and replace it. You know, there's air handlers, there's disconnects, there's process piping, antennas, microwave antennas, dishes, you name it. Whatever they can put on the roof, it's all got to be contended and it's all got to be scheduled. Okay, so part of that particular one there is going to be optimize the economic opportunity. So if I need these dishes to do my communication between one site to the other, I can't just go in and unplug them for 3 months while I'm replacing the roof. I have to come up with a contingency plan for that. Okay. And of course, the last slide, I got 2 more on this one, life cycle costing. The total cost of ownership over the life of the asset. Total cost from the very beginning, from inception. Freight cost to deliver the piece of equipment from design is all part of the cost life of that equipment. Right up to all my maintenance, all my energy I spent on that particular piece of equipment, all the repairs, refurbishments, right up to the time where I dismantle it, I move it out, and I dispose it. That's the total life cycle cost of that particular piece of equipment. So it's not just the initial cost to buy it or the cost to maintain it. It's the entire spectrum. Okay? That includes the annual operating costs, okay, maintenance and disposal costs, so all the labor. That's why you're going to have a CMMS, computerized maintenance management system, to track the costs on your assets. Okay? I've got an older cafeteria in my facility. It was built in 1964. I have the original ovens. Some of those ovens, collectors want the ovens because they're so old. You know, they should have been rebuilt like 40 years ago. And it does, but efficiency is not very efficient. Dishwasher is not very efficient. So part of my life cycle costs, I can prove, right, to management that some of my cafeteria equipment, like my walk-in freezers and so on, and by the way, how important are walk-in freezers? They keep all my meat, right, for all my employees that they cook every day. But in some cases here, total life cycle cost of that piece of equipment, it far exceeds a new piece of equipment, the cost of that. So when I talk about my life curve, I'm basically in the bottom end of that curve, unreliable. So I will probably put that in my justification plan. Okay, now it's time to replace it. And here's another angle to that. Life cycle costing is a process of determining all cost incidents, okay, incidentals to the planning, design, and construction to the very beginning, maintenance, all the way to the very end, okay, disposition of the structure or system or infrastructure over time. So some basic alternatives would be considering alternatives. What can I do with this particular oven? Well, can I go out and lease one? Right now, the economy is not very good for the defense industry, so I may make some concessions with my dining room contract. I'll extend the contract for 10 years if you give me $100,000 worth of capital. The $100,000 worth of capital, I'm using their money to replace my ovens or my stoves or whatever the case may be. So, I'm going to look at strategically some alternatives and what I can do, okay? Estimating the cost for that's going to be a given as part of your installation plan, okay? Computing life cycle costs for each alternatives, okay? Am I going to be better off to go with electronic or pneumatic systems? What's going to give me my longest longevity in regards to the equipment or infrastructure? So I'll need to base that. I'll need to determine. How many bought tires for your car? You buy some new tires for your car, right? So when you're down by the new tires, you want to get one, performance tires. But most of all, you want to read how long will these tires last. Do you want to buy tires that last 5,000 miles? Not really. I mean, even if they're only $20 a tire, that's a smoking deal. But 5,000 miles, that's not very far. I'll put 5,000 miles in, 6 months maybe? And they're worn out. So some cases I'm going to look is the quality, 60,000 mile tire, what type of warranty. So all those you take into account before you get on discount tire. So you're probably going to Google those and determine which tire, which manufacturer, which brand, which model of tire, type of tire is going to be the best for your vehicle. And then typically, do we ever replace with same OEM tires, or we do try to upgrade? You always try to upgrade, okay? Same thing on pieces of equipment. Can I bring more capacity in case I expand this? So as I replace this panel, instead of being an 800 amp panel, maybe I'm going to replace it with a 1,000 amp panel so I have more capacity. Or an air handler. Instead of a 50-ton air handler, I'm going to replace it with a 75-ton air handler. Why? Because I can probably expand that part of the building and add more production or maybe another data center. So I'm going to look at my capacity in regards to my capital investment requirements. And then, of course, conducting the appropriate risk and uncertainty assessments. Part of the risk and capital planning, the assumption is I'm going to get funding. That's always a big assumption because sometimes you don't receive the funding. And you can plead all you want, I need that because the roofs, the buildings, the infrastructure is really in the point of failure. But if you don't have the funds, then what do? Well, you roll up your sleeves as a maintenance organization and you come up with alternatives, okay? But at some point, the alternatives are going to run out, okay?